Starting off this countdown at number 10, Prince Philip's sisters were German supporters. Many royal enthusiasts know that Prince Philip was born in Greece and that his family has suffered several losses in his life. Philip's mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and his father moved to Monte Carlo with his mistress. Prince Philip's sisters all married and he was left on his own. He once explained, "It's simply what happened. The family broke up. My mother was ill, my sisters were married, my father was in the south of France. I just had to get on with it." You do, one does. Prince Philip's sisters each married German princes, and eventually they developed friendships and ties with Adolf German supporters. His sister Cecile and her husband joined the party, and his sister Sophie married a director of the Third Reich's Ministry of Air Forces. Sophie even named one of her children Karl Adolf. Number 9, Princess Beatrice dated a convict. She's happily married and has a lovely baby, but Princess Beatrice has at least one very questionable relationship under her belt. In 2006, she dated Paolo Lazu, who was convicted of a number of dangerous crimes while they were together. Beatrice's mother tried to defuse the tension surrounding the situation with a statement: "We all have our own journeys and have to learn our way, but Beatrice is a sensible girl with many friends, including Paolo. We must trust her judgment." Number 8, Sarah Ferguson. Sarah Ferguson, popularly known as Fergie, married Queen Elizabeth's son Prince Andrew in 1986, and then 6 years later, a scandal erupted. Paparazzi photographs captured Fergie vacationing with an American financial advisor named John Bryan. In one photo, an image quickly plastered on the front page of Everywhere. Bryan appeared to be licking Fergie's foot. Things didn't go very well after that, and Fergie and Andrew separated in 1992, the same year as Charles and Diana, and divorced in 1996. Later, Fergie was accused of taking a $633,000 bribe. Fergie's marital drama, however, didn't end after the divorce. In 2010, a News of the World journalist posed as a businessman and said he got Fergie to accept a $633,000 bribe in exchange for access to her ex-husband. A video recording of their meeting was released to the media, and Fergie later apologized, saying she'd made a serious lapse in judgment. Number 7, Princess Anne's first husband had another child outside their marriage. Princess Anne was married to Mark Phillips from November 1973 to April 1992, and they have 2 children together, Zara Tyndall and Peter Phillips. But it turns out that Mark has another child, one who was reportedly conceived during the time he and Anne were married. Mark Phillips is allegedly the father of a daughter named Felicity, who lives in New Zealand now, but who apparently lived on the same 700-acre estate as Zara and Peter while they were growing up. Her mother, Heather Token, attempted to have Mark claim paternity in the 1990s. She told Papers, "My ambition is to get Mark's public acceptance of her and to be able to enter his name on her birth certificate." He refused, but was paying her $7,000 a year for 5 years at the same time. Number 6, Prince Harry using slurs. In 2009, Prince Harry was dealt a huge blow to his reputation when a tape emerged of him using racial slurs against members of his own army platoon, while they waited to be deployed from Sandhurst Military Academy. In the video, appearing as though it is shot by Harry himself, you can hear the prince using offensive language as well as racist terms. Once again, Harry had to make a public apology and try to save the royal family from further embarrassment. It didn't work, and the footage was relentlessly replayed around the world. In a statement, Harry said he understood the impact of his words and the offense they could cause. Too little, too late though, I guess. Number 5, King George V hid away his youngest son. Prince John was the youngest son of King George V, the Queen's grandfather. The young boy reportedly suffered from epilepsy, and the royal family deployed a tactic to cope by hiding the child away from the public view. Royal biographer Christopher Wilson had noted that some family trees completely leave out Prince John's name. If they feel they have somebody that isn't up to scratch, they want to write them out of the history books, and this happened in the case of Prince John, the moment that he died. We hear no more about him, Christopher Wilson had said. Number 4, Princess Diana's passing. The most commonly reported conspiracy is that Diana and her lover Dottie were murdered by British secret agents from the overseas spy agency MI6 on the orders of the royal family. It's based on the claim that the couple were engaged to be married and that Diana was pregnant. Dottie's father argues that the royal family and the British establishment could not face the fact that Diana's 2 sons would have a Muslim stepfather, and their very existence would be a rope around the neck of the royals. There are many slightly varying theories based on a central premise, such as that rogue MI6 agents carried out the termination without their handler's knowledge. They say she was fed up with the incessant press attention and intrusions into her private life, so Diana faked her passing. To escape from the attention, she set up a spectacular crash with the help of Dottie and is now living in peace somewhere. There's even a theory that the crash was meant to be fake but went horribly wrong. Paul, one of Diana's former butlers, says that the princess even predicted her own passing in a car crash. Apparently, she was so scared 10 months before her passing, she wrote to Paul saying that there was a plot made by a member of the royal family, and that her car brakes would be tampered with and she would suffer serious head injuries. And all of this would be so that the Prince of Wales could marry again. These theories got even bigger because it's so hard for some people to believe that the princess with all her wealth and bodyguards could pass away in a traffic accident. Number 3. The Queen and her secret cousins. In 2011, a documentary aired on the British network Channel 4. It was called The Queen's Hidden Cousins and revealed a scandal that had avoided the public eye for decades. In the 1940s, mental disabilities weren't understood like they are today. The royal family viewed it as an embarrassment, and 2 of the Queen's first cousins, Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon, became victims. Nieces of the Queen's mother, the 2 girls were forced into a mental institution in 1941 and remained in care there for the rest of their lives, cut off from the royals forever. In the documentary, nurses who oversaw them often stated that no members of the family ever came to visit the 2 sisters, who were unable to articulate speech, but had great mischievous spirits. But this claim was later disputed by the family. Number 2. Meghan Markle was an escort. The only reason people think most of the public doesn't know about Markle's past is that the royal family must have paid a small fortune to get her co-worker escorts to sign massive NDAs to get them to not talk, and most magazines are too scared of lawsuits to publish anything about it. Multiple people who have worked with or knew Meghan Markle have reported that before she became famous, she worked as a yacht girl, which means she was basically a high-end celebrity intimate worker. And no, this isn't a joke. You can even hear it straight from one of her former co-workers who worked with her. His name is Christopher Jones. If you Google the intimate revealing pictures, you used to be able to find them, but not anymore. It's all been scrubbed from the internet, which must have cost a fortune. After her and her royal husband got engaged, they all disappeared. All of this was done under the table, so on paper, yacht girls' official duties are just handing out drinks and other basic services so they don't get in trouble. But in reality, they're just a fancy term for an intimate worker. Number 1. Queen Victoria married her first cousin. A lot of people know that Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were related, so it might not be surprising to learn that Queen Victoria, who provides the genetic link between the 2, married her own first cousin. Victoria and Albert met when she was only 16, and she proposed to him 5 days into his trip to England. Now technically it is illegal, but I guess because they're royals they can do whatever they want. And when you think about the whole family, it's kinda creepy. I mean, in order to keep the royal blood in the family, they all just have to marry their cousins and such.
At number 10 spot, we have the economy will drop. Since the Queen has passed away, many places in the UK will be at a halt for the next 10 days as Operation London Bridge commences. Part of the plan is that London banks and the London Stock Exchange will completely close down. Her funeral will be treated as a national holiday, only affecting their economy even more. It is estimated that Britain will lose a total of 1.2 to 6.5 billion pounds following her passing, but since it just happened, we will just have to see how much it will affect this time. The fact that a whole country will basically shut down its operations for one person is crazy to think about, and if you really think about it, one day of closure is bad already, just imagine 10 days. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and leave your video suggestions down below, and we'll promise we'll see it. At number 9 spot, we have the nationwide panic. For those who don't know, Queen Elizabeth II is the longest reigning queen to ever exist, with just about 70 total years. So the majority of the people in Britain have only lived their lives with her as their queen, so now that she's passed, it's expected that things will be a lot different. Obviously, I don't believe people will start looting stores and committing crimes, but the fact that the economy is going down and many people will be losing their jobs for the next few days is very detrimental. I mean, when Princess Diana passed away, the public was going crazy. She had even tens of thousands of flowers laid right in front of the palace, as well as people waiting days just to sign her memorial. Who knows what type of public reaction we'll get from the Queen passing away. At number 8, we have the Commonwealth. The Queen is basically the head of all 16 Commonwealth realms. This is just crazy to think about because all of these realms have their own prime ministers, but the Queen, with all of her power, is able to take control of all of it. Now that she passed away, Prince Charles is expected to reinforce his support to all the Commonwealth realms, but let's just say he chooses not to do that. Who knows? For all we know, he could have a master plan to take over all the realms and reinstate the British Empire and become the king of all the places. I know it's pretty far-fetched, but it wouldn't be the first time the royal family did something suspicious like this. At number 7 spot, we have Operation London Bridge. So you've probably been hearing all about the Operation London Bridge, so I guess I'll talk about it a bit in this video. Operation London Bridge, or codename London Bridge is Falling Down, is the plan for all what will happen on and immediately after the death of Queen Elizabeth II. This includes her death, her funeral. However, others believe that the UK government will have a lot more power than this. Others suggest that they'll have the ability to cause blackouts and even censor any type of news they want. So who knows what type of censorship we will see. I mean, I understand this plan is primarily for passing the torch and commemorating her, but I wonder what's happening behind the scenes. At a number 6 spot, we have the royal family tension. As we see in history, we know that monarchies are very unstable because the power goes to certain people, and we know how power hungry the royal family could be. Now, if Prince Charles doesn't take the throne, next in line will be Prince William, and we kind of got a gist of the drama with him recently. I don't need to discuss that in this video. These type of power changes are always bound to cause tension. Like, imagine if Prince Charles didn't take the throne, then Prince William later later passes away. This would mean competition amongst his own children. I mean, this is also pretty far-fetched, but hey, history speaks for itself. In the hump of our list, we have the Church of England. When she was alive, the Queen prided herself on being the head of the Church of England, but now that Prince Charles might be taking the throne, who knows if he'll retain this status. Anyone who knows of Charles knows about the many controversies and scandals he's been a part of, which makes him a threat to the Catholic Church, meaning an end to the relationship between the royal family and the church. At number 4 spot, we have a social media blackout. Operation London Bridge commences. It's expected that there's a social media blackout that follows. This will not only be enforced by the royal family's major communication channels, but also by the British royal government. They'll attempt to put on hold all unimportant news stories, announcements, and major events. It's also believed that the government websites will only display a black banner. So I'm very curious how this will affect the transfer of vital news to the public. If Britain is not giving news about the Queen, then who is? I just see a lot of misinformation being spread, which is very bad when something this big happens. At number 3 spot, we have Parliament will be recalled. So now the Parliament will be recalled now that she's passed away. This includes both the House of Lords and the House of Commons. If the Parliament is unavailable for whatever reasons, MPs will be expected to make their way back to London wherever they are. Then if the Prime Minister is not in London at the time, they will be asked to be expected to return as a matter of urgency. At number 2 spot, we have buried in a vault. Queen Elizabeth II will be buried in a vault at Windsor Castle. This includes the presence of the entire royal household, and there they will host a private ceremony as the Queen's body is descended down the royal vault. All the way at a number 1 spot, we have money will look different. I mentioned the economy and how it'll be affected from all this, but this point is completely different from that. This is because the order for new money to be issued will come in the UK and all other Commonwealth countries. This is because as the new king, Charles will replace Elizabeth's face on all the coins and notes that she appears on. So if you got some Queen Elizabeth cash lying around, I suggest you saving it right now because it'll only get more rare now. Well, these are the top 10 scary things that will happen with Queen Elizabeth's passing. Rest in peace to the Queen. I hope everything is good in the royal family. I'm your host Andrew, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. At our number 10 spot, we have Ivan the Terrible. To get a nickname like this, you already know he must have done something very bad. I mean, his name ain't Ivan the Humble. Born in 1530 to Grand Prince Vasily III of Moscow, he became an instant representative for the Rurik dynasty. It wasn't until shortly after his father would pass away, when he was only at the age of 3, causing him to take the position of Grand Prince of Moscow. 5 years later, his mother passed away, which only added more fuel into this little boy's heart. Then on January 1547, Ivan was crowned the first Tsar and Grand Prince of all of Russia. At first, he was doing very well. He improved military service, strengthened church affairs, and introduced extensive self-government. Except during these turbulent times, he was escalating his own paranoia, and his mental health would deteriorate as more issues would be piled up. In November 1581, he attacked his pregnant daughter-in-law, which caused a miscarriage. This also stirred up a famous encounter with him and his son, where he struck his own son in the head with a staff until his skull was broken, killing him. That's not all. He once blinded the architect who created the St. Basil Cathedral to ensure he would never design anything as beautiful again. During 1560 as well, Ivan's paranoia led him to believe the citizens of Novgorod were committing treason. So what did he do? He went on to massacre them, killing around 2,000 to 27,000 people. Ivan even decided to sew the Archbishop of Novgorod into a bearskin and then let dogs hunt and kill him. He also had 8 wives, but that's not so scary. Kinda nice, am I right? At number 9 spot, we have Vlad the Impaler, another unpleasant nickname on our list. First of all, he is responsible for the deaths of around 80,000 people, but for some historians that number pushes to around 100,000. Out of those people he apparently killed, around 20,000 of them were impaled. No wonder he got this name. Many people have him as inspiration for Dracula for his bloodthirsty ways. For example, after his family passed away, he decided to hold a banquet and invited hundreds of members of all of his rivals' families. So when he had them all over, he then all had them stabbed, and their still twitching bodies were impaled on these spikes. And another time when he retreated from a battle, he ordered 20,000 defeated Ottomans to be impaled on wooden stakes. This was such a horrifying sight that when the Sultan Mehmed II saw the lines of bodies, he quickly retreated back to Constantinople. Regardless of his bloodthirsty motives, he remains a national hero in Romania. His victorious campaigns against the Ottoman forces, which protected both the Wallachia and Europe, have won him praise as a military leader. So good or bad, he did kill a lot of people, but then again, they were impaled brutally. So so I don't know what to say about that one. At number 8 spot, we have Polaris. This leader created one of history's worst torture devices of all time. The brazen bull was designed by Greek tyrant Polaris, who reigned in ancient Greece from 5070 to 554 BC. He's most famous for his cruelty, and he would literally use the funds of his own citizens to create more torture devices. The craziest thing about his brazen bull was the fact that he asked a designer slash builder named Polaris to create it, but it was said that Polaris used him as the first victim to be executed in it. Talk about a backstab. This torture device was a bronze bull that would basically roast victims alive. And to make things worse, before the victims were placed into the bull, they were forced to have their tongues cut out and their hands bound. As the victims burned alive, their screams would appear as if the bull was alive. At number 7 spot, we have Emperor Kalagula. This guy was definitely the craziest Roman emperor I've read about. If you had a bloodthirsty tyrant and a sexual deviant, you would have Emperor Kalagula. After being born in the year 12, he would go on to become Roman emperor from 37 to 41 CE. When he first took authority, it was noticeable that something terrible was wrong about him. Kalagula had incestuous relations with his 3 sisters and engaged in plenty of intimate group sessions during his reign. And on top of that, he forced senators to bring their wives and their daughters to his palace, where he would convince them to do very inappropriate things for him and others in authority. Then to become a full menace, Kalagula would brag about his sexual performances right in front of the husbands of the women he slept with. This guy was a player, a menace, and a ladies' man all in one. In a pursuit for wealth, he would stage trials of innocent people in order to confiscate their estates, while he gained large quantities of money and luxuries for himself. Eventually, things started to go bad. I mean, bad leader, bad place. Makes sense. However, the last straw was after famine and bankruptcy hit. It was here where he planned and moved to Egypt to live as a sun god. This eventually triggered his murder in January 41 AD. At number 6 spot, we have Joseph Stalin.
Stalin was born in 1878 and was the infamous leader for the USSR during the 1930s.
Despite their success against Germany to end the war, Stalin was far from being innocent from any war crimes himself. He is indirectly responsible for around 30 to 40 million deaths, though that number tends to hop around a lot. Out of those millions, many of them happen to be in the Soviet Union itself. For example, in 1932 and 1933, millions of Ukrainians were killed in a man-made famine, which was engineered by none other than Joseph Stalin. Then in 1936, Stalin initiated the Great Purge, aiming to rid the Communist Party of some of the biggest detractors and rivals of the group. Hundreds of thousands of people initially were arrested by Stalin's NKVD, which was the secret police at the time. Many were executed or sent to the Gulag, which, for those who don't know, were these terrible, harsh labor camps where many people would pass away. Also, he organized a series of mass executions, which totaled around 22,000 people, consisting of Polish officers and POWs. This is known as the Katyn Massacre, and it was done for the sole purpose to ruin the future of the Polish military. As I mentioned previously, he was responsible for the deaths of his own people, which is probably the worst crime he ever committed. Historians believed he killed over 20 million of his own people, making him one of the most evil rulers to ever exist on this list. In the humper list, we have Mao Zedong. This guy was terrible, but also good, depending on the way you want to look at it. To set the baselines, he created the People's Republic of China, introducing communism for the first time. This is where a lot of controversial things happen. In the purges of the early 1950s, millions of wealthy peasants, intellectuals, and saboteurs were killed. Then came the Great Leap Forward from 1958 to 1962, one of the most insane experiments in social engineering ever. Private plots were abolished and communal kitchens were introduced. This experiment turned out to be a disaster, which ended up killing over 45 million Chinese people. Then in 1966, he launched the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, in which millions of people were persecuted and suffered public humiliation, imprisonment, torture, hard labor, and even execution. Except there was some good he did. Despite killing millions, I know, still terrible. Mao turned China from a third world country into a first world country with their improved international relations. As well, Mao united China together, and if we really think about it, his high death toll is because of an accident. I know, still terrible, but not as terrible. At number 4 spot, we have Queen Maria I of Portugal. Born in 1734, Queen Maria exhibits some eyebrow-raising behavior prior to her husband/uncle's death in 1786, but it was that sad event that really set her on the road to madness. When her eldest son and only daughter passed away as well, Maria's already fragile mental state went completely downhill. The religious fanatic became convinced convinced she was going to hell and reported visions of her deceased father's blackened corpse being tormented by demons. Visitors to her apartment could complain that they were tired by her constant screaming and wailing. I mean, she didn't kill anyone, so that's not a terrible thing. Except in February 1792, she was deemed mentally insane and was treated by Francis Willis, the same physician who attended George III of the United Kingdom. So this is probably the least evil monarch on this list, but her mental deterioration and effects definitely made it difficult for the people at the time. At number 3 spot, we have Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was Iraq's ruler from 1979 until 2003. His sick need for power, ultimate authority, no matter the cost in human blood, was a consistent theme throughout his entire reign. Saddam was well known for employing terror against his own people, including the use of mustard gas and nerve gas to subdue the Kurds. To mention some of his horrible actions, in 1980, he launched an attack on Iran. The battle ended in a stalemate with over 1 million people passing away, many including innocent women and children. Then he attacked Kuwait in 1990, igniting the first Gulf War and killing another 85,000 people. Following that war, uprisings killed around 150,000 civilians. The list goes on with the amount of attacks and other war crimes he committed on innocent people. Except in 2003 he was captured in Iraq, and then in 2006 he was famously sentenced to death by hanging. At number 2 spot, we have Pol Pot. Born in 1925, Pol Pot was a political leader for the communist Khmer Rouge government that led Cambodia from 1975 to 1979. His goal was to wipe out all sorts of Western influences in Cambodia and create his own country based on his personal likings. He wanted to take Cambodia back to its roots by advocating for more grassroots farmers and laborers. This basically made educated and professional people number 1 on his hit list. One of his first decisions was to evacuate Cambodia's urban areas. This displaced millions of people, resulting in a complete life change, as many of them were forced to work in labor camps as farmers. It was pretty bad because if you refused to do this type of work, this would place you in a detention center and would give you 2 options: comply or die. The Khmer Rouge also had their own torture manual, which was used in the form of interrogation. It was said that 1.5 to 2 million Cambodians were killed during Pol Pot's rule. At a number 1 spot, we have Genghis Khan. What did you expect? So he takes our number 1 spot for the most obvious reasons ever. He is responsible for the deaths of over 40 million people. Genghis Khan of Mongolia is arguably the greatest military leader of all time. The Khan regime at its peak covered over 9 million square miles of territory, which ranged from Central Asia to places as far as Poland and Korea. The reason he was able to take over this much area was largely due to the way he commanded his army, their ruthlessness, tactic, and extraordinary speed. In one example, Khan's son-in-law was killed by a stray arrow during 1221. He then took his whole army and attacked the city of Nishapur, which is modern-day Iran, and it was said that he killed everybody in the city, which is believed to be 1.75 million people, in a single hour. The victims were beheaded and their skulls were piled up in a large pyramid. His campaign would prove to be more evil than death alone, but we don't need to mention anything else. He was so cruel that even cats and dogs would also fall victim to his strength. Besides destroying entire civilizations, Genghis Khan's conquest may have helped to spread the bubonic plague across Asia and Europe as well, thus killing another 75 to 200 million people. Glad to know we don't have this type of guy around today. Starting our list right at number 10, we have the fall of the European Union. Amid the invasion of Ukraine, tensions in Europe are rising and most of the peace is in shambles. It seems that every war starts in Europe, so a collapse of the entire European Union is very possible based on the current events. In one of his quatrains, he says, quote, "Sacred temples of the Roman time will reject the foundations of their own foundation." Many believe he is referencing the Treaty of Rome, which essentially founded the Union in the first place. The Union is meant to promote peace, values, and the well-being of its citizens. Without this, Europe is just a bunch of countries that hate each other. That happened in the past, and look how that turned out. Boom, World War I, World War II, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, wars for Italian unification, the list just goes on and on. At our number 9 spot, we have the invasion of France. Est-ce que je peux aller aux toilettes? That's pretty much all I know from France. But Nostradamus knew way more about what would happen to Paris in 2022. In his 1555 book, Les Prophéties, he predicted, quote, "Blue head shall white head harm in such degree, as France good to both shaller amount." He also claimed in this that the enemy would be coming from the east. The Ukraine-Russian war is still ongoing as far as I know, and Russia is technically to the east side. So it could be a foreshadow of yet another invasion, or could it be another setting for the next world war? Stealing our number 8 spot, we have a solar storm. If you know nothing of space and its horrors, let me introduce you to a solar storm. They are literal changes in the sun's atmosphere. These changes cause huge bursts of energy like solar flares, which could send streams of electrical charges and magnetic fields towards Earth at a speed of 3 million miles per hour. Well, Nostradamus said that these would affect us in 2022. He said, quote, "Like the sun, the head will seal the shining sea. The live fish of the Black Sea will almost boil." Nostradamus predicted a solar storm of unprecedented proportions, the liquefying of the poles, and a rising sea level. This sounds pretty terrible, especially since we had a huge solar storm in 1859 known as the Carrington event. It's just lucky that we were not a technically advanced civilization, so we didn't have to rely on that. But this solar storm still sent electrified gas and subatomic particles towards Earth, which disrupted telegraph networks and even caused the northern lights to light up the whole world. Let's hope this one doesn't come true. At our number 7 spot, we have asteroids. Nostradamus and every other prophets have made countless predictions regarding asteroids every single year, so you know that one year they may actually have it right. But let's just hope not. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of asteroids flying towards us, so not to scare anyone, but eventually we will be hit by one. In one of his predictions, Nostradamus said, quote, "Fire do I see from the sky shall fall." And he continued this by saying, "The cause will appear both stupefying and marvelous. Shortly afterward, there will be an earthquake." There is no doubt he's talking about an asteroid coming down on Earth, but we still don't know if that will mean if it will be an extinction level asteroid or just a small meteor shower. But what I do know is that this prediction is not anything good. And to our surprise, there's a potentially hazardous asteroid named 1989 JA that is supposedly around 1 mile long and is estimated to come close to Earth. But who knows? It could change its direction and come straight towards us. Sadly, at our number 6 spot, we have a nuclear warfare. Nostradamus said the world will go boom. Jokes aside, because this is one that's definitely more serious than that. The prediction of nuclear warfare happens every single year, but for good reason. We have so many nukes with so much tension between each country. I could just picture every single government hovering over their hand above the nuclear button. You would think after the World War II bombings of Japan that humanity will find more peaceful means of warfare, but I guess not. Nostradamus predicts that the nuclear warfare will commence in the year 2022 with some pretty harsh implications. He said that this type of warfare will not only change the climate with its destruction, it will also change Earth's position altogether. Moving the Earth's position is not good by any means. Does this mean that we'll be closer to our neighbor planets? If so, we are all doomed. Right in the hunt for our list, we have World War III. With all the increased tensions in Europe, World War III seems very possible. All it could take is one country to attack a country with many allies, such as NATO, and there we go, World War III. Well, Nostradamus predicted this as well. In his quatrain, he said, quote, "A horrible war which was being prepared in the West. The following year, a pestilence will come. So very horrible that young, nor old, nor animal may survive." In view of the current situation between Russia and Ukraine, many experts are saying that World War III has already begun. And it's no surprise, all the world wars have started in a specific area and brought every nation for its help. In another one of his passages, he said, quote, "The enemies will take a maritime city, hunger, fire, blood, plague, and a double dose of all disasters." This maritime city could be Ukraine, which was invaded by Russia. At our number 4 spot, we have the Golden Period. This is a very huge prediction because this could mean peace and love for a very long time. So let me elaborate. Nostradamus is not the only person who predicted the Golden Age, so this makes it a little bit more believable. He claims that we are currently in the midst of a period of change, destruction, and evil. This period started from 2019 and it will come to an end in 2025. After that year, he says humanity will experience a golden age where humanity is thriving with little to no issues or even conflicts with one another. It's said that after 2025, a new world order will be issued which will help humanity find peace amongst one another. Don't know about you, but I have mixed feelings about this one. On one end, like, yay, peace, love, prosperity, yeah. But what will this new world order be? And what will happen between 2022 and 2025, since we have 3 years more of pain and destruction? All the way at our number 3 spot, we have the rise of artificial intelligence. Technology has evolved so much over the last few decades that it's hard to predict what developments will be made one year to the next. This makes it even more impressive that Nostradamus appeared to hypothesize about artificial intelligence about 5 decades ago. In his book of predictions, he said, quote, "The moon in the full of night over the high mountain, the new sage with a lone brain sees it. By his disciples invited to be immortal. eyes to the south, hands in bosoms, bodies in the fire. According to Sky History, the passage references an immortal sage. This sage, dear friends, could mean artificial intelligence, which is something that has evolved over the last decade. There appear to be many forms of AI produced nowadays, ranging from self-driving cars to self-talking robots. But who knows if any of these will backfire on humanity. I've seen iRobot, so I'm a firm believer of this. At our number 2 spot, we have a year of inflation. According to Nostradamus, he claimed that 2022 will be the year of inflation. He says, quote, "The copies of gold and silver inflated, which after the theft were thrown into the lake at the discovery that all is exhausted and dissipated by the debt. All the scrips and bonds will be wiped out." In this prediction, he claimed that the inflation will spiral out of control and the US dollar will collapse, causing things like gold, silver, and even cryptocurrency to become assets for the future. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have worldwide hunger. Another scary prediction made by Nostradamus claims that the increase in prices for food will cause worldwide hunger. The prediction said, quote, "No abbots, monks, no novices to learn, honey shall cost far more than candle wax. So high the price of wheat, that man has stirred his fellow men to eat in his despair." Basically, he claims that global famine will be caused by inflation. Mass starvation will cause panic all over the globe. People left and right will be fighting over natural resources. It's the type of thing that would cause all of us to go back to our natural instincts of survival of the fittest. So it doesn't sound too appealing for many of us. Coming in at number 10 spot, we have Queen Elizabeth and the Russian spy. Anthony Blunt was a multifaceted individual. He was an academic, an ex-British Army officer, and an MI5 spy during World War II. After the war, he became the Queen's art historian. But during the war, Blunt was tasked with secret missions to recover precious items that once belonged to the British royal family, and these included art, jewels, and even rare coins. Additionally, he was asked to retrieve sensitive correspondence at the request of Queen Elizabeth's father. Blunt's efforts resulted in the retrieval of almost 4,000 letters, including those between King George VIII and Prince Philip. And for those who don't know, he served as Hitler's very own art agent and henchman. So, best to assume he's not a good guy. These letters may have contained information that could shed light on the royal family's ties with the 1940s Germany. Surprisingly, the royals chose to keep their enemies close rather than expose Blunt's treachery. Despite his covert activities, Blunt remained a trusted member of the Queen's staff until his espionage activities were discovered in 1979. Number 9, the SAS sets Princess Diana's hair on fire. Did you know that the royal family has a connection with the country's elite special forces, otherwise known as the SAS? Well, in fact, members of the royal family are trained by the SAS in preparation for kidnap and rescue missions. However, during one of these training missions, the SAS staged a mock assault on a building where hostages were being held at. The rescue team used Range Rovers and stun grenades to carry out this operation, and Princess Diana was among the royals who attended the session, and she was very thrilled to participate. However, things didn't go as planned for the princess. As she drove up to the building, she forgot to roll up her window. So when the stun grenades exploded, one of the pellets got stuck in her hair, which caught on fire soon after. Luckily, an officer was quick to pat out the flames and there was no harm done. Despite the near miss, Prince Charles and his entourage couldn't help but laugh at the situation. Coming in at number 8 spot, we have King Edward VIII. Back in 1936, the world was shocked when King Edward VIII gave up his throne for love. He wanted to marry Wallis Simpson, who is an American woman who had been married twice and was suspected of having ties to the Germans back in the 1940s. The whole country was in an uproar, and British security services were tasked with keeping an eye on the couple. What they discovered was very scandalous. Wallis was still legally married to her second husband and was involved with multiple men, including a car salesman whom she showered with gifts and paid. But that wasn't the worst of it. The surveillance revealed that Wallis had a relationship with Joachim von Ribbentrop, who was the foreign minister of Germany back in the 1940s. It was a shocking revelation that led Prime Minister Winston Churchill to send Edward away to the Bahamas during World War II. Despite the controversy and scandal that surrounded the relationship, Edward remained devoted to Wallis and they stayed together until his death in 1972. Coming in at a number 7 spot, historians who study the royals have long suspected that Richard III played a role in the deaths of his 2 young nephews after their father King Edward IV passed away. The king's sons, 12-year-old Edward and 9-year-old Richard, Duke of York, were believed to have been locked up in a tower by Richard. However, rumors have circulated that either Richard or his servant Sir James Tyrrell murdered the boys, but there is no confirmed evidence to support either theory. In 1674, the remains of 2 young princes were discovered buried under this tower, and many people have requested requested permission to examine the urn containing the remains over the years, but those requests have been denied by the Queen, adding more to this mystery surrounding the fate of these two young royals. Number 6. Jimmy Savile. King Charles has been linked to yet another scandal involving a British abuser, Jimmy Savile. The shocking story of Savile's abuse was revealed in a new Netflix documentary released last year on April 6. The program exposed how Savile, a well-known television personality, had used his power and influence to hide his decades-long pattern of abusing vulnerable children. Shockingly, it is estimated there were over 589 victims of Savile's abuse. The documentary has also raised questions about King Charles' possible involvement with Savile and has once again cast a dark cloud over the British royal family. Coming in at a number 5 spot, we have Princess Beatrice was romantically involved with a convict. Princess Beatrice, the daughter of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, found herself in the midst of controversy when she dated Paolo Luzo, a man who had been convicted of assault and battery. Before meeting Beatrice, Luzo has been arrested for manslaughter after he brutally beat a man named Jonathan Duteller, who later passed away from his injuries. Despite the palace's disapproval of Luzo, Ferguson defended her daughter's relationship, emphasizing the importance of trust between a parent and their child. As Ferguson noted, he said, quote, "We all have our own journeys and have to learn our own way. But Beatrice is a sensible girl, and soon to be 18, with many friends including Paolo. We must trust her judgment." Number 4. Edward VIII had a friendship with Adolf. The British royal family has been shaken by shocking revelations that Queen Elizabeth II's uncle, Edward VIII, was a German sympathizer back in the 1940s. This information was kept secret from the public but was exposed in the book 17 Carnations, The Royals, the Germans, and the Biggest Cover-Up in History. The book reveals that Edward VIII and his wife Wallis Simpson, from whom he abdicated the throne, had close ties with Adolf and were even known to have dinner dates with him. It was also discovered that Simpson had access to classified information and was passing it on to the Germans during this time. Number 3. Diana threw herself off the stairs while pregnant. Princess Diana struggled with depression during her marriage to Prince Charles, was known by many, and she poured her feelings and emotions towards this out on tapes. She even confided in journalist Andrew Morden, sharing her most personal and raw thoughts. In one of her recordings, the People's Princess revealed the shocking incident that occurred when she was 4 months pregnant with Prince William. Feeling desperate and ignored by her husband, Diana threw herself down a flight of stairs in a desperate attempt to get his attention. Charles has dismissed her pleas for help, accusing her of a crying wolf. The Queen, who witnessed the incident, was left horrified and shaken. Number 2. Drunk man broke into Queen Elizabeth's room. In 1982, a drunk man walking the streets named Michael Fagan decided it was a good idea to climb up a drain pipe and break into Buckingham Palace, which basically triggered one of Britain's biggest security scandals. Apparently, Fagan smashed an ashtray and entered the Queen's bedroom carrying a shard of glass. It was early in the morning and the Queen's footman was out walking the corgis while her overnight police guard had already left. Surprisingly, the Queen remained calm and even offered Fagan a cigarette while waiting for backup. When the maid arrived, she was shocked to find Fagan in the Queen's bedroom. After Fagan was led away, Queen Elizabeth rightfully criticized her security team for their failure to protect her, and I can't really blame her. Number 1. Prince Albert and Queen Victoria were first cousins. We've heard all the stories about how all the royals are related, and we know Prince Charles and Princess Diana were 16 cousins. Marrying your very distant cousin is one thing, but marrying your first cousin is quite another. While the very thought makes us cringe, it happened in the royal family when Queen Victoria and Prince Albert wed in 1840. The first cousins also had 9 children together. It's a very disturbing fact and something the British royals would never allow happen today, because just imagine that scandal.